Hey, what's up everyone, and welcome to today's video. Please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, because that will help me out in growing the channel and being able to produce more videos like this one. This episode will guide you through the issues of Uncanny X-Men published in 1982, with this issue being the last one of the year. Issue 164. The X-Men are under attack. They're in Lilandra's royal vessel and the BROOD are in pursuit, with multiple spaceships and warning shots being fired by the BROOD. As they are not able to get any kind of contact with the people aboard the ship, the Hun Master is requesting instructions from the Great Mother. She tells the Hun Master that the humans are to be captured alive, with the exception of Wolverine. Since he somehow seems to have been able to get rid of the egg in his host body, he may be slain. The Great Mother does not want any of her eggs to be lost, and any kind of sacrifice is acceptable in trying to rescue them. If the Hun Master fails, he himself will get slain. Aboard Lilandra's ship, Cyclops, Lilandra and Storm are discussing what their options are inside this ship, which is a pleasure craft and not a fighter craft, unlike the ships which are shooting at them. Those ships are a lot more maneuverable and have a higher maximum velocity as long as they are still not able to shift into warp space. Carol and Cyclops notice how the BROOD seem to deliberately be missing their shots, and they wonder why that is. Scott has been aware of the BROOD handling the X-Men with kid gloves, ever since they've escaped. Lilandra tells Scott that her spaceship does have some firepower, but not a whole lot. He sends Piotr, Carol and Logan to man the weapons, while Kitty looks after the still hurt Kurt. Carol and Logan seem to be able to figure out the controls. Even though it's alien technology, it seems fairly simple, resembling an arcade game. Piotr asks if it's really necessary for them to kill, and Logan responds by saying, "It's us or them, Petey." And according to Wolverine, the BROOD are just the predatory alien race that deserves to be killed. He thinks to himself that at least he can avenge the X-Men that way, since he regrettably might not have a way to save them. They start firing away and Colossus starts to doubt himself. Apart from him not having the necessary aiming and firing skills, as opposed to Carol and Wolverine, he also notices that even though the X-Men are his comrades and doesn't want to fail them, and that the BROOD are purely evil, there's something inside of him that keeps wishing for another way. Cyclops has placed himself at a spot where he can fire the optic force blast through the temporarily created ruby quartz extrusion without damaging the hull of the ship. He once again thinks about Wolverine knowing, but not wanting to tell what's going on, and how he will have to try and make Logan talk after this ordeal is done. That's something he's specifically looking forward to. He starts blasting at the BROOD's fighter ships, trying not to hurt them, but just forcing them to disengage. They seem to be alive, just like the starships the BROOD are using. On the other side of the ship, Storm's having an inner monologue about how her powers are seriously being hampered by them being in outer space. She reverts to using lightning attacks, but does not want to hurt the ships, only the BROOD. Even though she's vowed never to take a life, in the case of the BROOD, she's very much tempted to break that vow. As she's trying to control the lightning bolt attacks, she loses her grip and kills all the ships directly surrounding them, by accident. The rest of the BROOD pour on the attacks, since the Shi'ar vessel's shields seem to be buckling. On the inside of the ship, due to the attacks, the control panel Lilandra is sitting at starts to malfunction. More specifically, the warp drive controls. She tells Kitty and Kurt that some repair work will have to be done, but can't be done on the inside. Someone has to do a spacewalk on the outside of the ship and do the repairs. Nightcrawler volunteers, but Kitty overrules him by saying he can hardly stand up. And aside from that, what will he do when the BROOD starts directly attacking him? Duck? Scott picked up on Kitty's plans to go outside the ship, and he objects. He thinks it's way too dangerous. Kitty tells him that that's ridiculous. She's the only one of them that can face out of harm's way if necessary. Just the same way she faces inside the pressure suit while she's talking to him. Lalendra can guide Kitty through the work that needs to be done by using the suit's built-in camera and radio. She promises Scott she'll be careful and will be just fine. She faces through the ship's hull, bringing along all the necessary tools, making her way to the spot where the repairs need to be done. Very aware of the fact that the slightest misstep will throw her off the ship, and they won't be able to come after her. We then see a short instance of Carol getting dizzy and having blurry eyesight. Seeing colors and images she'd never dreamed possible. She figures it's the residue from the treatment the Brood have given her before. It seems to be a minor episode and doesn't last for very long. The Brood notice Kitty walking on the outside of the ship and start shooting at her. They don't care if she loses grip and floats away in space. They'll just as easily pick her up and capture her again. Their beams go right through Kitty though. However, even though Kitty has done this oftentimes before, it never gets easier on her. She keeps fearing, what will happen the time my power doesn't work? She somewhat regrets her opening her big mouth and volunteering in doing this. She's just a kid. At that moment she realizes that she's not a kid at all. Instead, she's an X-Men. She's earned a spot on the team, and this is just one more example and a proof of why. The Brood conclude that since the ship hasn't activated its warp drive, they must be crippling the ship. They close in on them. Cyclops notices how their own firepower is slacking and how they're being hit from all sides. He hails Storm to ask her what's going on. She responds by saying that she's lost total control over her powers, and her powers no longer yield to her will. She knows that deep inside that if she does use her powers, she will kill again, and she can't bear that thought. We see that Carol apparently had another episode and starts sweating. Kitty gets hit by shrapnel flying around. She didn't see it coming, so she didn't phase. The suit closed itself, so she didn't lose a lot of air. She is bleeding though, even though she thinks it's nothing serious, apart from the fact that it does hurt a lot. Lalendra calls off Kitty's mission, but Kitty tells her no. She wants to finish the assignment, just a couple of more minutes. Just a couple of more minutes. Or the rest of her life. Carol's having another episode that lasts quite a while longer than the previous one. Years ago, she got transformed into Miss Marvel due to a freak accident which combined her human genetic elements with that of the alien Kree race. A couple of months ago, she lost her powers when she got attacked and drained by rope, yet her hybrid genetic material remained, according to the experiments which were done on her. Now, a couple of days ago, the experimentation the Brood performed on her apparently triggered a dormant untapped potential. And that potential is being fully realized now. Carol cries out, in wonder more than in fear, while a blinding light flares within her soul. It's the thing outside of her that instantly becomes a part of her, forming a union between them. A union that will last until death. That light is pure power, and Carol uses it without hesitation, aiming it at all the ships that were attacking Lalendra's royal vessel. While this was happening, Kitty was able to fix the damage which was done to the warp drive and tells Lalendra to throw them into warp. The ship enters warp, but is Kitty on board? We then switch back to Earth, to Salem Center, New York, where the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters is located. Even though the school has been fully rebuilt, even better than before thanks to the robots provided by Lalendra, it's actually no longer a school. He started the school in support of his dream of humans and mutants living together in harmony. The students of the school eventually became the X-Men. And even though they often became hated and feared by regular humans, they have sworn to protect and save those very same people. Over the years, his students became his surrogate children, whom he loved with all his heart. With the fairly recent abduction, no contact, and quite possibly the death of his X-Men, his nights have become haunted and he feels guilty. Their blood is on his hands. The dream may still be good, but the dreamer is done. At this moment, there are only two people in the mansion, him and Illyana. Illyana has been finding her way back again after not having been around for 7 years while she had been in limbo. She says how it's almost the same as she remembers it, even though it's a bit spooky, being so empty with just the two of them there. Charles tells her that Moira will be coming back on Monday. They have a talk during dinner about how Illyana sometimes sort of hears Charles's voice in her head, even though he's not around, and about how she was only able to speak Russian when she was abducted, and since she has returned, she woke up one day and she was able to speak English perfectly. Xavier explains he thought her while she was asleep, and she asks how. He explains to Illyana that he is a mutant, like her brother, but his powers are telepathically. She asks him if he knows what she's thinking, but Charles assures her that he doesn't mind scanning people indiscriminately. Her secrets are safe from him. Illyana then asks if she is a mutant as well. Xavier says he doesn't know, but she could be. She then teases him by saying that she can do neat things as well. Xavier senses a strong psionic shield and wonders if it's a natural one, but he doubts it. Moira has told him about Illyana's abduction by Belasco and that they didn't know what kind of things she's experienced there. It's something worth finding out. It all intrigues Professor X somewhat, but in the current depressed emotional state he is in right now, he doesn't care enough to put the effort in. Let Moira deal with it. He just wants to be left alone. Back in space, Kitty wakes up, realizing she's hurting so much that she has to be alive. She looks around, but all she can see is an all-encompassing bright light. It emanates from a figure she recognizes as Carol. They both return aboard the ship and catch up with the new status quo. Cyclops, Storm, Lilandra and Carol discuss on what steps to take next, while Nightcrawler and Colossus care for Kitty. Kitty says that she thought Carol was so beautiful, she thought she was an angel. She also says that she feels cold, and Kurt tells her that they are all cold. Lilandra explains that Kitty's repair work fixed the warp drive, but it was pretty much the ship's last breath because the ship has lost main and auxiliary power. Thus there's no life support. She also explains that if they don't find a way to regenerate the matter and antimatter cores, they will all freeze or suffocate. Very soon. Storm asks if she and Cyclops will be able to do that with their powers, but Carol knows exactly what to do. She knows Storm and Cyclops' power will not be enough energy to regenerate the cores. So she heads down there herself, reaches deep within herself to her newfound powers which seem to feel as old as time itself, and she releases the power, regenerating the cores, but it takes a toll on Carol. She's drained from it, and apparently they've discovered the upper limit of her new powers. Lilandra tells everyone to get the rest. When they wake up, they will get a meal, and then it's time to get some work done. During repair work on the outside of the ship, Colossus and Carol share some thoughts. She tells Colossus about the cosmic awareness her old friend Captain Marvel had, how that worked, becoming one with the universe, and how she thinks she's even gone beyond that. Not a spiritual merger with the universe, but an actual physical one. She feels that she taps into a white hole when she uses her powers, that the source she draws her energy from is the primal fabric of the universe. She can generate heat, light, all kinds of radiation, gravity, and the whole way she perceives things around her has totally changed. She can't really explain the way she sees things around her now, but it's wonderful. Colossus tells her that she sounds happy, and that her abilities would be invaluable to the X-Men. She declines the invitation though. Regardless of her being a friend of the team for a long time, it would mean returning to the Earth with the team. She tells him that from when she was a teenager, she had always wanted to become an astronaut. Explore space, discover new worlds and alien civilizations. She almost made it as Miss Marvel before she lost her powers. And returning back to Earth, joining the X-Men, would mean rejecting her heart's desire. Alternatively, staying in space would mean leaving everyone and everything she's come to love on Earth behind. She tells Colossus that Earth was Carol Danvers' home, but that she fears that Earth is no place for binary. On the inside of the ship, Kurt is checking up with Kitty's recovery. He concludes that she is doing better than before, but is still not fully recovered yet. Kitty says she's fine and feels rotten for not assisting in the repair work. They joke around a bit, and Kurt seriously urges Kitty to get back into bed until she's fully recovered. Kitty reluctantly does so. Kurt then teleports to Cyclops and Lilandra, asking how long it will take for the Mediscan systems to be operational again. Scott asks why and if there's a problem. Kurt explains to Scott that he wonders what cured Kitty, because he has no clue. With her being punctured by shrapnel, and thus having radioactive elements in her bloodstream, and being on the outside of the hull during warp transition, she probably absorbed enough hard radiation to kill a person. Normally a human being would not have survived an ordeal like that. He wants to find out what the reason is for a miraculous recovery. Wolverine enters and tells him that some questions are best left unanswered. Cyclops asks Wolverine what that's supposed to mean. Wolverine once again asks Cyclops why he didn't help him in killing the Brood Queen. Things get heated and Wolverine pops his claws out of anger. He immediately apologizes to Scott and walks out frustrated. Kurt wants to go after him and talk to him, since they're good friends, but Scott tells him to stay here and help Lilandra. We then switch to Storm, who is in the shuttle bay and is troubled with her not being in tune with her surroundings. At first she thought it was because of the Brood world being so corrupted, but now she fears the problem lies inside of her. Some element is disrupting the harmony in her mind, body and soul. She plans on finding out what it is exactly and to set it straight before it's too late. Being in the shuttle bay gives her enough space to fly around a bit. She uses her powers to lift herself up, and as she does, she suddenly feels a pain in her body, loses concentration and falls back on the floor of the ship. Scott had been watching her for a couple of seconds and runs towards her. Aurora tells him that she's fine, even though she's crying her eyes out, and just wants to be left alone. He tells her that something is tearing the team apart, and they have to figure out what's going on, together, as a team. Aurora explains how she's linked, due to her powers, with the atmosphere around her. That she's bound to the primal force of the living world. She feels as if she's wasting away, being so far away from the Earth. The longer she stays away from home, the more lost she will become. She tries to explain how everything around her annoys her, being inside the ship, surrounded by nothing organic, and that she can't even draw from the love and joy she had for her teammates. Scott doesn't understand because they haven't changed, but Storm tells him she's changing. Ever since her escape from the Brood, she felt something deep inside of her, in the core of her being. She doesn't know the exact cause, nor the final effect it will have. She then collapses, and Scott tells her he's calling Nightcrawler and that she's sick and should be in bed. She then has an epiphany when she realizes the difference between the way she's feeling and Kitty's miraculous recovery. She realizes she's carrying a child. She probes inside herself and starts to panic and lash out. She blasts Cyclops outside of the shuttle bay with a gust of wind, and she shuts the doors to the bay. Scott can see her leaving inside of the shuttle. She apparently left the costume behind on the floor, to Scott's surprise. Scott tells Carol to hurry up and follow her, before she disappears out of sight. Wolverine is being snappy, saying that's probably exactly what she's trying to do, with good reason. Scott says he's not in the mood for games and tells Wolverine to explain himself. It's long overdue, especially with what's going on now. Wolverine then explains what he found out, what he experienced. He tried to tell everyone before, but he simply couldn't. It hurt him too much to tell his friends they've all been implanted with Brood X. He tells them all that he had thought of killing them all, to spare them the transformation, but he couldn't push himself to do that either, because there's still hope. They might get lucky, run into a miracle or whatever. He tells them that the X are not removable surgically, that they are bound to their nervous systems, and when it hatches, it will reshape the host body into a Brood, absorbing the host's abilities. He also explains how he felt guilty for him being the only one with the mutant ability of a healing factor, which allowed him to survive and destroy the egg. He tells them that the embryos of the Queen have a certain degree of awareness concerning their hosts, that they will take any steps necessary to make sure the hosts survive when being threatened. And that's the reason why Kitty healed as fast as she did. Dead hosts are no use to them. But that awareness can also make them do very nasty things, Wolverine tells them. Carol reacts by saying they don't even know the meaning of the word nasty. In a rage, she leaves the ship, without thinking, not using a hatch, but right through the hull, leaving behind a huge hole and a following explosive decompression, launching the X-Men and Lilandra outside of the ship with immense force. Thanks for watching the video, I hope you enjoyed it.